I recently just got back from spending a week in Wyoming in the mountains around Jackson Hole as well as Yellowstone. It was a fantastic trip full of unpredictable weather, wildlife everywhere, and one of my favorite things to photograph, landscapes. I wouldn't say that I'm a landscape photographer because I feel like that boxes me into this one thing, and I do a lot of different things. But there is something really special for me about taking photos of landscapes. I've shared on this channel numerous times the way I feel like that beauty and nature affects the heart of humanity and how there can be so much healing you can find just by getting out and being in beautiful places. For me personally, that might be one of the biggest reasons I'm drawn to photographing landscapes, because I come alive, like something happens to me right here when I'm out there, and I very much enjoy that process. I also appreciate that this kind of photography makes me go out and do things. It gives me a reason to travel, places I want to go. I envision what kind of photos I'm going to get, and then I go and execute that. And for me, that's been really helpful in just getting disciplined in the craft of photography. I love the act of waking up early, driving some distance or hiking some distance to be somewhere in the dark and wait for that sunrise. And that is my all-time favorite time of the day to shoot, the sunrise. For me, I cannot get enough of landscape photography. If you were to go to my website, which is linked right below, you're going to find travel galleries upon galleries of the various landscapes that I've shot, as well as their context, locations and things that I have found interesting around those places. But primarily, most of my travel galleries are all going to be landscapes from around North America and Europe. And here's the thing. I mostly shoot my landscapes on the Leica M11 and the Leica M6, and sometimes the Hasselblad as well. But for the most part, I would say that I'm taking the Leica M cameras into these spots to take landscape photos. So I thought I would take a little bit of time in this video and show you some of my favorite landscapes that I've gotten photos of and talk to you about what I'm looking for as a photographer. And by the way, this doesn't necessarily have to be a Leica video because these things would be true no matter what camera I was shooting with. But as someone that does pursue landscape photography with my Leica, I believe it has a relevant spot in this conversation. So I'm going to share the things that I'm looking for when I go out to shoot landscapes. The very first thing I look for when I am out shooting a landscape is balance in the composition. When I'm composing a landscape, I want to have a good balance of positive and negative space. If the whole image is full of stuff and not any sky or water or anything that breaks that up, it feels a little too busy and crowded. I like my photos to breathe a little bit. And for the landscape that I'm shooting, to have a little space that you notice its outline and its curves. And sometimes that involves layering as well, but not every spot is a spot you can layer in. So for me, it really comes down to creating some balance in the composition of space, the positive space and the negative space. I also look for basics in composition. I want to have good balance from left to right, bottom to top. I want my subject to be defined, typically in the middle, but if it's a sprawling landscape that kind of goes from left to right, then sometimes the middle bleeds all the way to the edge. I think the things that I would avoid in landscape photography regarding composition would be cramming too much into a smaller photo, and so maybe you might need a wider lens. But let me throw a caution out real quick because I typically shoot my landscapes at 35mm. And I know that's actually pretty tight because most landscape guys want to go out and shoot with a 24, a 28, sometimes even lower than 24. And there are places that will require that. Big mountains that you're close up to, you might need something at 20 or even lower. A good example of that would be like Lake Moraine up in Banff, Canada. If you're on one side of the lake and you're trying to get the whole photo across the lake, those mountains are pretty close because it's not a big lake, and so you actually do have to go pretty wide there, but I would say that's more of the exception and not the norm, at least for how I shoot. And one more thought just about focal length, because for me, again, 35 is like my go-to wide shot, but I also have a 90, and I use that 90 quite a bit on landscapes as well on my Leica system, and on my Sony system, I use my 135 prime pretty often for landscapes too, because not everything needs to be super wide, and when we come to landscapes, we often think, let me see how much I can show in this photo, but what if you could punch in and just show me a little bit, but show me something really interesting? I have some landscapes that I've taken with the 135 G Master on my Sony camera, and I just absolutely love the amount of compression that I'm getting, as well as how detailed the shot can be. So make sure you're balancing your photos and you're thinking through composition, what lenses you're taking out, and how you're approaching composing this scene. And just avoid the trap that everything has to be super wide, because it definitely does not. The second thing I look for when I'm out shooting landscapes is some mixed lighting. And this can be a bit challenging depending upon the locations you go to or what the weather is going to be like, because you don't always get mixed lighting. But I always try to find some sun and some shade in the same photo. And if it's completely overcast, that's okay. I can still make it work. But mixing lighting where you get a little contrast naturally, so you don't have to touch your contrast fader too much. Like if it's an overcast day, but there's some sun coming through, even if where the sun coming through might not be the most interesting thing, I might make that sun spot the hero of the photo. That one ray of light can take something that might be kind of boring and make it incredibly interesting just because of the way the lighting is hitting that. Find a way to play around with mixed lighting. You might find some really interesting landscapes can come out of it. The third thing for me comes down to texture. A minute ago when I was talking about focal lengths and then punching in using a longer lens, again, just getting out of the trap of shooting everything super wide, I always like to try to find ways to bring that image in so I can see some texture on the mountains. And sometimes that texture is in the form of the trees, sometimes it's the rock, sometimes it's snow or a glacier, but just whatever it is, texture really helps a landscape pop. I was mentioning Lake Moraine a few minutes ago, and when I was there last, I was shooting wide and I was shooting tight, nothing in between. These tight shots have a texture to them and let you feel that place, and you may not even know that that's moraine, but the texture of it feels really nice to me and makes for an interesting photo. So when you're out looking at landscapes and you're pulling your camera up to your eye, ask yourself, how can I make the texture of this environment pop on this photo as well? And that is one benefit of shooting Leica lenses on Leica cameras, is I feel like Leica does a very good job of making the image pop kind of straight out of the camera, and you shoot a lower aperture and you find this to be even truer. But it's not just a Leica thing. A lot of lenses can have this effect as you push the aperture a little lower. A lot of landscape photography is at a very high aperture, but don't get trapped into thinking everything's gotta be at f/16 or f/8. Go out and shoot some landscapes at f/2. If your lens can stay sharp, why not? Give it a try. And let's pause for just a quick minute for a little housekeeping. If this is your first time here, my name is Dave. I'm a photographer and videographer from the Bay Area of California that mostly shoots Leica as well as Sony and a bunch of film cameras too. Give me a sub below if you like this kind of stuff. I post 2 videos every week unless something goes horribly wrong. Next thing up, I own a shop called Very Good Presets, and you can find out information right below about Very Good Presets. All of the photos that you're seeing today were edited with those presets. But here's the coolest thing before you fast forward this part. We are looking for ambassadors to kick off a new season, season 2, YouTube of very good presets. There is a link right below so you can apply to be an ambassador. It's a great way to make some money. Photographers, we're always looking for some extra income because we got to be able to pay for that new lens or new camera or even film. So check out the ambassador program linked right below for very good presets. All right, let's get back into some landscape talk. The fourth thing that I'm looking for when I'm out shooting a landscape is a tri-tone scene. And what I mean by a tri-tone scene is that I'm looking for something in real life that has 3 dominant colors. This photo is a good example of this. This was taken on New Year's Day a couple of years ago. We've got a completely clear blue sky with white mountains and a brown desert foreground. This is a tri-tone photo. And I look for this often in natural landscapes. If there's the sky, the thing I'm taking the photos of, be it a mountain, a glacier, a forest, and then the ground or the earth. Lighting can affect this as well, and don't get boxed in thinking so legalistic that it literally means like 3 colors, but what I'm saying is like 3 color spectrums, like a spectrum of blue, a spectrum of green, a spectrum of brown or yellow or orange. But if you start mixing all those, and it's really tempting to do that, especially that HDR style photography where the sky looks like it's on fire, and we've got this completely clear, multicolored beach, and that style of photography is kind of its own thing, but it's just not what I'm looking for. If I was out shooting that kind of scene, I'd want the sky to be one color, the water to be another, and the sand to be another, and I would call it a day. This idea of a tri-tone photo could be even simplified even more going into a 2-tone photo, which really is what black and white photography is. It's like a spectrum of 2 tones, black and white. But you can see this naturally occurring in reality as well, because you might have an image of, say, some snow and the sky's white, the snow is white, but the forest is dusted with snow. So you might have 2 colors in a scene like that. Look for those tri-tone color spectrums in your landscapes, and you might find yourself really happy with what you're getting straight out of the camera. And if you are happy straight out of the camera, you're gonna be super happy when you edit your photos. You don't want to have the mindset that you're just going to fix it in post. If you chase down some of these principles, you might get something better on the start, and then your edit emphasizes what you've already captured. And I think that's going to make you happier. It definitely makes me happier. So that's my approach to landscape photography, what I'm looking for when I'm going out there to shoot. I'm oftentimes just carrying this M11 with this 35 Summilux, if not the M6, or both, because they're both so small you can take them both easily. I hope you guys found this video helpful. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback in the comments right below, so be sure to drop a comment and let me know what you think as well. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.